We've got Reg Dean with us here this afternoon. Now, Reg, we've got to knowing because Reg was a tramway worker on the Geelong Tramways. In that period, you were how many years on the tramways?
Near enough to 10 years.
A great camaraderie in amongst the tramway workers?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. They didn't matter where you seen them. They always recognised you. Didn't matter how you were dressed or anything. We're like a brotherly system.
And Geelong, for instance, in Melbourne, where I've been a tramway worker there, and we had 8 different tram depots and quite an extensive system. Yeah. In Geelong, it was about a 20-kilometre system, 12 and a quarter miles is what we've been reading through. And in a sense, you had that one depot. One depot. How many trammies? Can you remember how many trammies you'd have?
At the peak period of the tramway workers, that's motormen conductors, was just about 80.
The trammies themselves, were there characteristic connies, anyone that used to sing or perhaps recite a bit of poetry or play an odd trick,
Oh, we had a few of those, yes. We had one fella, whenever he was in the depot having a meal break, he'd start up an argument just before he was due to go out, and he'd get 2 fellas arguing the point like hell, and he'd just get up and walk out and leave them arguing.
He's a nice bloke. What, flustering the crew, was he?
Yeah, that was a fellow by the name of Dick Lodge, who's no longer with us, of course, but yes. He was a character, and we had Eric Sweeten, who was a well-known fella on the trams.
Yes.
He swam all the year round, and he taught swimming at the Eastern Beach.
Yes.
And one of his tricks, what used to be, because the city depot for most trams was up at the corner of Ryrie and Moorabool Streets.
Yes.
Especially in the holiday season, he'd get out of the tram and he'd point up in the sky, and you'd see the people come out from underneath the verandas and all look up. Yes. But there was nothing there.
Right. Okay.
They did have conductresses on the Geelong Tramways during the war, and as the fellas returned from the Army, Air Force or Navy, the conductresses were reduced in number and replaced by ex-servicemen.
Interesting. And the women that then had filled the spaces of the men on the Geelong Tramways, like the Melbourne Tramway story, then made room for a lot of the men that were returning?
That's correct, yes. I think when I'd been there about 2 years, 3 years, and there was 4 conductresses left out of approximately 25.
How much was a tram ride in Geelong? Did you have 1 section, 2 section tickets, etc.?
Yes, we had different sections. We had a penny section, a tuppenny section, a threepenny section, and then on the north we had a 4penny section. And later, of course, they increased. The penny section disappeared, became a tuppenny, then the threepenny became 4pence, and the 4pence became 5pence, and eventually became 6pence. Children were half price. We worked the whole system. You very seldom were on the same route from one day to the next. You might be on Belmont North today, yep. And you might be on West tomorrow, or you could be on East Jewel the next day. Then you could go to Eastern Park the following day.
Yes.
Some days you were on early shift, which we call day shift, which commenced, the first tram out was at 6:10 of the morning.
Yes.
To go to North Geelong. And we had one character on there that he knew we only had a £1 note in change, and every Monday morning he'd hand up a £10 note for his fare, which at that time was 4pence. So of course it doesn't take trammies long to get to know what goes on, so we put enough money in to make up a change for £10.
Yes.
And yes, Greg Clark was on it next Monday, and he's going to cop him, so he got the £10 worth of change in a brown paper bag, yep. Which was made up of shillings, 6pences, 3pence, and a few pennies and a few halfpennies. And it was £10 less the 4pence. So when he handed up the £10 note, I'm not sure it was Greg, but he'll do for the time being, he took the £10 note, handed him the brown paper bag, and he said, I think when you check that, he said, you'll find it's the correct change. Yes. He was still counting his change when he got to the North Terminus. He never tried it again.
Never tried it again.
Yeah, well, we did get a petition up, of which 16,000 signatures, but the council, the SEC, Ford Motor Company, Bender's Busways and the Shell Company didn't want anything to do with tramways.
So you're up against some pretty strong forces there.